I was walking through a wild, borderline town. 2 flags on the jailhouse roof and frost on the ground. The hotel band were singing, there were jewels in your hair. And then the smoke blew in and made the little room, and everywhere the television man got loaded and cried into his drink. The wallflower women, they all blushed pink. And nobody there even had to think about how far they got to go to Reality Row. PJ walked in, he'd just been stoned all day. He'd have some big ideas, but he threw them all away. Outside the crowd was restless, there was no leader in sight. The funeral had been cancelled, so they'd all turned up for the fight. And I walked straight into the barroom, and I ran right into you. We hadn't met before, but I always knew we were going to. You said it doesn't have to show you've been too long on Reality Row. The candles burned lower as the dancers looked for number 9. The streets were deserted when the drunken priest he died. And you tell me all about your marital complications. Well, you can save them up for your 19th century charity reservations. Well, wrap me up in your long coat and scarves. Let me take you away from this place, surrender to the stars. You said I'll have to say no to Reality Row. And you splash on the big screen, the 4 riders yelled improve. I thought I heard the thunder coming, but nobody moved. The whiskey flowed like water as the ground gave way. Everybody was placing bets, too busy to even pray. You shrugged your shoulders, said, let's go to Reality Row. I was walking, well, we were walking away from that borderline lagoon. Back to the city and some old rented room. You asked me who am I and where am I and when will I explode. You said that's something, well I said you should know. How about the row?
What is behind this door? Somewhere full of memories, childhood play, and teenage dreams. Is this an empty room? It was my bedroom when I was growing up. Where has all the furniture gone? It's been cleared out, now used as an ironing room. What is this cat on the windowsill? A china piggy bank, given to me by Auntie Betty and Uncle John. Are these bookshelves? Bookshelves? And I think I put them up. Where have you been? Away. I've been waiting. I'm here now, but only visiting. I think I could do with a refresh. I think so too. The carpet is 50 years old. And a lick of paint wouldn't hurt the walls. Where have you gone? Away. Why don't you stay any more? I have a new life. But you are still with me, inside, and I can recall so much of the time I spent here. One of my earliest childhood memories of living in Fleet would have been probably coming back from primary school with my brother and our gran, Ivy. She would meet us at the top of the road, and she would meet us with two bikes, two little boys, probably around about 6, maybe 7, and she would meet us there with two bikes and a dog. This would probably be Susie, who had come back with us from Singapore and was my sister's dog. And so anyway, so she would walk up, and my gran would probably be about 70 at this point. So she would have wheeled up two bikes and a dog to meet two little boys at the top of the road so we could cycle back to the house. My mum would have been probably working nights at this point, so she would have been sleeping through the day. So my nan would have come over, and at home she would have baked. Uh, Ivy was a pastry chef, and she worked for a number of big houses throughout her life. So, and I'm talking country houses, and her sister was a head kind of cook within the house, and Ivy was a pastry chef. But so you can kind of imagine the sweet delights and the cakes, the iced fingers and the chocolate buns and all of that kind of food that would have been waiting in the kitchen as we came in from school, having cycled down the road, followed by an old lady with a dog.
Send me down to the nerve made to live on stone ground words. Imagine that you've done all that, and I come back for more. Imagine
A while. It's been a while since you visited. Carpet's the same. He's still there upon this window ledge, waiting to be held by you. It's been a while since you slept, but the bed is gone. I know not why or where, and the cupboard has been cleared out of all that was you. It's been a while since you drew back these curtains, looking at the outside world before returning to sleep that little bit longer, before the need to rise and not be late. It's been a while. All your books have gone. The shelves remain, a memory of what you read, now in the hands of other readers, or gather dust in another space. It's been a while since you slept, but the bed is gone. I know not why or where, and the cupboard has been cleared out of all that was you.
I could get into the subway systems. I rode those tunnels like a 6-foot mole. I came back and I was gasping for air. I made it to your place, I was praying you'd be home. We really shouldn't be alone tonight. Let's go to a movie where everybody fights, but in the end there's dancing, songs and smiles. You need lots of smiles when it's reach a factor minus zero. Reach a factor minus zero. There you go. Reach a factor minus zero. Reach a factor minus zero. There you go. It's one of those days where I don't like myself. But I get along with me, okay? I slip beneath these sheets and shiver here a while. I find this happening more frequently these days still. I practice nightly, I try to keep ahead. This sort of servicing is all but dead, but I keep coming up with time enough to breathe. I take what I need when it's reach a factor minus zero. Reach a factor minus zero. There you go. Reach a factor minus zero. Reach a factor minus zero. There you go.
The Art of Surfing by the Boomtown Rats. That was the first album I ever bought, the first proper album, the one that I kind of listened to on the radio and thought, yeah, I'm going to go and buy that. I think I was at the Duke of York's at the time. I was a boarder there. So I think I was probably around about 11. So, but Marillion, script for the Jester's Tear, that was my first gig. This is December 1982. I'm 15. My sister, I think, who knew the band, I think had got to know them at Reading, or they were on the local touring gig or something like that, or got to know people of the roadies, got to know some of their roadies. Anyway, she had got tickets with a number of her friends, and we went up in a transit van. So I would have been in the back. They're all probably 18, 19, 20s. I'm 15. This is my first gig. And it's proper mosh pit. It's proper sweaty. It's proper, I don't know anything like it. Marillion, I mean, they're pretty kind of derided now, but they were very progressive and they were very lyrical. They kind of took on kind of Peter Hamill and Peter Gabriel lyrics and vocalism, and there was a great kind of stage show that would be going on. So yeah, I was totally in my element and absolutely loving
now just shut
every
your
minute
eyes
of it.
and imagine this on top of the pops.
Used to play all of their stuff after that. I kind of
Peter
stopped
Paul
after
standing there.
Fish left the band.
Hey.
Yeah, Marillion,
That was Imagination, and now a big
Marquee.
hand please for a song about drugs.
1982.
I've never honestly taken any of it. Do you know that in the hospitals, right? Can you picture the situation, right? A whole ward full of cases. And this one case, the young guy, perhaps about maybe 18, 19 years old, he's lying in the hospital bed, and it's like surgical white sheets, bowl of grapes, all the get well cards. His mother, his father, the local policeman, the social worker, all standing about looking at him. He's got the drips in the arm. He looks absolutely wasted. The last thing that this guy needs is for some tosser to turn round and say to him, "I told you so," right? This is about drugs, the false sense of experience, about the daily suns, about the stars and things, It's about how they take heroin and morphine and label it with cannabis as drugs, just drugs. This is all about the stupidity that revolves about drugs. As I said, the next single due for release on January the 24th on EMI Records. And this is called He Knows You Know.
Problems. Light switch.
It's been a while since you drew back these curtains, looking at the outside world before returning to sleep that little bit longer, before the need to rise and not be late.
Put your love in me, babe. I need you now and forever. Put your heart, soul, everything you are, just got to be a part of me. Touch the stars tonight. I wanna be in heaven. Put your love in me. Put your love in me.
Reading, comics, playing in the woods, bikes. Skateboarding, wasn't that good at. Love sports, but it's the books. It's the books that I really remember. I still buy 2000 AD. I started that in 1978. I think it was 10p at the time. I did have the first 500, but I sold them about 10 years ago, just taking up too much space. And then it's the books. It's things like Ursula Gunn's Earthsea trilogy. It's Dune. It's The White Mountains. It's that kind of fantasy stories. Then that kind of went into Isaac Asimov and that kind of futuristic story. But there's one that really sticks with me. I think I was probably 9. It was the T.H. White. It's Once and Future King. It's a retelling of the Arthur tales. It transposes him from the 5th century to the 14th. It deals with his younger education, and then it goes through the forming of the court, and then the love of Guinevere and Lancelot, and then King Arthur's final death. But underpinning it was this magical sense that everyone and everything could change, and that we were in transition. It didn't place it in a kind of this was them and this was us. The character, he's known as Wart at the beginning. He's not seen as King Arthur. He's not coming from that kind of background. It's mythical in that sense, but it's also ordinary. And that's what I liked, and that's what I kind of latched onto, this ordinariness within stories. I think Dune, I think Earthsea has those kind of, they are fantastical, but there's a sense that it could be anywhere. It could be any time. The first Saturday job I had was at Beeham's. It was a frozen food supermarket. Aisles and aisles of frozen food. I'd just started at sixth form college, and a number of other friends that I'd got to know there were also working up in Fleet High Street. It was good. I enjoyed it. Used to go there every Saturday and go out for lunch, get some chips, eat in the little canteen that was there. It was all very basic. I left there and went to work in an electrical shop, also on the high street. Very dodgy place. Had a number of videos and then TVs, VCRs, VHS, all of that. And then from there, I went and worked in Harrods. Now, I can't remember why I applied. I think my nan had gone on about it, talking about like Harrods having the best. And obviously we'd gone up there on kind of days into London, as it was a place to go and they had everything. So I applied and I got a job there first on Saturdays, and then I would work the summers. It was at this point, around 17, I became interested in photography. I wasn't doing any art courses. I was mainly doing things like physics and history. And I only had an Instamatic camera, so I'm not sure why I wanted an SLR. I'm not sure what was about it. None of my friends had cameras. So anyway, I became fixated on it. And during the summer, I worked one whole summer with the sole aim of buying a Minolta SLR. It's been a while. All your books have gone. The shelves remain, a memory of what you read, now in the hands of other readers, or gather dust in another space. It's been a while. Throughout O levels and A levels at Farnborough Sixth Form College, the drama club and the subject was my passion. It's kind of what I grew into. It became everything about me. I was good at sports, but I just wasn't competitive. I didn't want to be in the first team. I was quite happy to be in the second or third team of football or rugby. And I didn't really excel at academic work. I enjoyed the courses I was doing. I was a good communicator, but it's not where I wanted or saw myself heading. The drama just became part of me, the performing. It's that thing of maybe you wanted to be somebody else or to use up your nervous energy or not be so introverted, to be center of the stage, that kind of thing would all come into it. But I suppose in a way it just allowed me to dream, to go into other worlds, to get out of my head through writing and words and text what was I was feeling inside. My liege, I am advised of what I say, neither disturbed with the effect of wine, nor heady rash provoked with raging ire, albeit my wrongs might make one wise and mad. This woman locked me out this day from dinner. That goldsmith there, were he not packed with her, could witness it, for he was with me then, who parted with me to go and fetch a chain, promising to bring it to the Porpentine, where Balthazar and I did dine together. Our dinner done, and he not coming thither, I went to seek him. In the street I met him, and in his company that gentleman. There did this perjured goldsmith swear me down, that I this day of him received the chain, which, God he knows, I saw not. For the which he did arrest me with an officer. I did obey, and sent my peasant home for certain ducats. He with none returned. Then fairly I bespoke the officer to go in person with me to my house. By the way we met my wife, her sister, and a rabble more of vile confederates. Along with them they brought one Pinch, a hungry, lean-faced villain, a mere anatomy, a mountebank, a threadbare juggler and a fortune-teller, a needy, hollow-eyed, sharp-looking wretch, a living dead man. This pernicious slave, forsooth, took on him as a conjurer, and gazing in mine eyes, feeling my pulse, and with no face outwhere at facing me, cries out I was possessed. Then altogether they fell upon me, bound me, bore me thence, and in a dark and dankish vault at home they left me and my man, both bound together, till, gnawing with my teeth my bonds in sunder, I gained my freedom, and immediately ran hither to your grace, whom I beseech to give me ample satisfaction for these deep shames and great indignities. A lot of my time I spent up in my room, evenings and weekends, reading or playing on the ZX Spectrum. And then I think we got the Commodore 64. But while I was reading, or meant to be studying, I was also listening to the radio. Mainly I would probably listen to Radio 1 or Kiss FM or a number of pirate radio stations that were around at the time. And I would sit there, half doing what I was doing and listening to the radio, with a tape in the tape deck, ready to press record if anything new came on or sounded exciting, hoping that there would not be too much of an interruption from the DJ. And then you would put together a compilation and you'd carry it around with you, or listen to it again. And when the Walkman came in, that was just the greatest thing. With the Walkman, you could now listen while you travelled, while you're on your bike, while you're in your room, alone, and late into the night.
When everything goes wrong, sometimes it makes no sense. There once was a time I should have known better then. Although you may try, it won't come your way again. Hey, little girl, where will you hide? Who can you run to now? Hey, little girl, where will you go? Who can you turn to now? So why should I care if somebody let you down? That's nothing new. I know just what that can mean. Well, the way that they talk, the talk is all over town. And it's no surprise